Hello class, you have a substitute teacher today, so your first objective is to just watch this video and just make sure you understand how these work before you take the quiz. Your second objective is to take the quiz and pass it. It's the 3.5 quiz, so that's what you're going to be reviewing for today. And then after that, you'll make sure that all of your discussions from Chapter 3 and quizzes are finished and taken care of from Chapter 3. And then, once you're done with that, you may work on Think Through Math for the rest of the class period in the computer lab. Make sure you work hard on this. This may be a good day for you to just finish a ton of your homework right now so that you won't have to work on or worry about Think Through Math for the rest of the week. So, alright, just a quick review. So students that were last week, we worked on multi-step equations or undoing multiple inverse operations. For example, this has both a negative 6 and a multiply by 5 to the h. So the point of this is to undo the additive inverse stuff first, the addition and subtraction, before we undo the multiplication and division. I showed everybody what happens when we try to start with this first, and we need to remember a few things here. So instead we're just going to undo this minus 6 first. Always start with undoing, adding, and subtracting if you can. So that means you add 6 to both sides, and 10. So you're always going to add these together. You're always going to combine them. So a negative 16 plus 6 is going to be a negative 10. The equal sign comes down, and this goes to 0. And I'm left with 5h is equal to a negative 10. Now to undo multiplication, I divide both sides by 5. I divide by the same number that's being multiplied, and that is h equals negative 10 divided by a positive 5 is going to be a negative, and that's 2, and that's my answer here. Coming over here to the right one, so if you ever have an option to undo addition or subtraction first, you're going to do that. So that's my positive 4. I want to undo a positive 4 first by subtracting 4 from both sides. Remember I've got two sides of the equation, starting the side with a variable. And so I'm going to add these together, and so a negative 10 plus a negative 4 is a negative 14, and that equal sign comes down. This goes to 0, and I'm left with y divided by negative 3. To undo division, I'm going to multiply. So this is being divided, so that means I want to multiply both sides by this number, just like this, so that these will cancel out. And I have to keep it balanced, so I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Remember, that can be over 1, that can be over 1. And so y is left alone, and that equals, it's going to be 30. Negative times negative is a positive, and then 10 times 3 is 30, plus 4 times 3 is 12. That's going to be a positive 42. Okay, so this is a review from what we worked on last week. Some of the things on the quiz you're going to encounter are, well, I guess we did talk about this in the discussion video, the 3.5 discussion. The instructor, Rob, talked about how you do inverse operations. Let's see. There we go. To undo operations, you go in the reverse order of what we would normally do the operations. So order of operations tells us what to do when we're just operating math, when we're just doing things. What comes first, addition or multiplication. But when we're undoing those operations to find the variable, we're actually going to start in the reverse order. So if there's anything to add or subtract out first, or then multiply, or that we do these first and then move on to exponents and groupings. So looking at this here, this actually consists of a group. So even though it looks like you could just add 4 to both sides, this would actually be wrong. That you can't do that. You can't just add 4 to both sides because this 4 is in a group here, and you couldn't be able to cancel a negative 4 out of this group, because this doesn't even have a common denominator. So what we're going to do instead is, let's see, so there's no addition or subtraction to take care of, but there is a division to take care of. So we could actually multiply both sides by 2. I can do that first, and that cancels this out, and I'm left with x minus 4 is equal to, let's see, negative 20. Now that I've done that, now I go back and I restart and say, okay, is there any addition or subtraction to now take care of? And now I can take care of this plus 4. Remember, this is only when this is in a group, like it's in a numerator or denominator. So if you don't understand this, I would go back and watch the 3.5 discussion video. If you don't understand this, you probably didn't watch the video all the way through. So make sure you go back and watch that, and that equals a negative 16. Okay. And this one, this is also a group, so I can't just subtract 4 out of this first. I've actually got this negative to deal with, and there's a few different ways you can deal with that. My advice to you would be just to distribute like normal first, so sort of simplify the expression, and a negative being distributed becomes a negative x, and the negative being distributed here becomes a negative 4, and that equals 13. Now that I've done that, now I can solve. I can start with the additive inverse stuff first. I'm going to undo anything addition and subtraction, so I'm going to undo the minus 4 by adding 4 to both sides, and that's going to be equal to 17, which is equal to a negative x. So remember, if an x has a negative with it, it's not yet alone. So in order to undo that negative, you can think of it as it's a negative 1, meaning it's being multiplied by a negative 1, and to undo that, we're going to divide both sides by a negative 1. So that means x is equal to a negative 17, which makes sense. If the negative x is equal to 17, then the opposite of that negative x, which is a positive x, is equal to the opposite of a 17, which is a negative 17. The last one I wanted to show you is this. Again, you're going to see a few of them like this on your quiz, and if you ever see this, you could undo the 2, but how about we just distribute first? It seems so much easier. 2 times 4 is 8, so 2 times 4x is 8x. 2 times 6 is 12, and that's just that. Now this just becomes a regular two-step equation. So we're going to start with undoing the additive stuff first. So we're not going to touch the multiplication. We're going to just undo the addition stuff by subtracting 12 from both sides. That goes to 0, and the equal sign comes down. Remember, I'm adding these together, so it's a negative 12 plus a negative 12 is a negative 24. And then you've got 8x, which comes down. Now all I have to do is undo this multiply by 8, which means division is what undoes multiplication, so I divide both sides by 8. That goes to 1, and I'm left with x is equal to negative 24 divided by a positive 8, so it's going to be a negative, and 8 goes into 24 3 times. So that means x is equal to a negative 3. Now, at this point, if you understood that, you're great. You wouldn't have to watch this next set. I'm going to solve it one other way, just for those that kind of like the little extra challenge. But at this point, you could probably stop here and pass the quiz. You're welcome to watch the quiz video as well if you get stuck on something. Make sure you pass it. If you don't pass it the first time, go back and watch the sections that you missed and get some feedback from that. And then once you're done there, you're welcome to move on to the discussion. To any discussions you might be missing, and then think through math after that. So I'm going to finish this last one, and there's another way to solve this exact same equation by undoing this multiplication first. So remember, this is a group, so I can't just subtract 6 from both sides first. That would be wrong. Okay, I cannot do that. I can't take things out of this group unless I distribute, or unless I get rid of this 2, and then the parentheses could go away, because the parentheses are telling us that this entire thing needs to be doubled by this number, and that's what these parentheses are telling us. So I'm going to undo this multiplication first by dividing this entire quantity by 2. but since this numerator and this denominator share a common factor of 2, they can actually just be canceled out. So that's effectively undoing this multiplication by 2. I have to just do the same thing to the other side. And so the 4x plus 6, and now I'm not going to write the parentheses because I don't need them anymore, is equal to a negative 6, right? Because a negative 12 divided by 2 is a negative 6.
Mr. Mathis or Mrs. Bean, please pick up a call on line 1. Mr. Mathis or Mrs. Bean, please pick up a call on line 1.
Okay, so now this just is a two-step equation like normal. I can undo this add 6 by subtracting 6 from both sides. That goes to 0, and that's left with, let's see, a negative 6 plus a negative 6 is equal to a negative 12. And then the 4x comes down because I haven't got that part yet. Then I can undo this multiplication by dividing both sides by a 4. That goes to 1, and x is equal to a negative divided by a positive should be a negative. 4, 8, 12, 3, negative 3. And so you notice that you get the same answer here as you do over here, and they were solved differently. Again, I would recommend distributing first to keep it simpler, but this information right here is going to be especially helpful for you when you get to the 8th grade. So hopefully that made sense to you. Good luck on the quiz.